We bring you more in-depth coverage from the Skibinski trial in Winnipeg.
Every sick monster, he deserves to go out in a body bag.
A BC serial killer of multiple Indigenous women has been seriously injured after an incident in prison.
What we do is we provide a book for Christmas for each of the 1,400 kids in the 7 Athabasca communities.
And a new book is shedding light on how one author discovered her Indigenous roots. Good evening, I'm Kristen Achkate. Welcome to APTN National News. We take you to the trial of a non-Indigenous man who has admitted to killing 4 Indigenous women in Winnipeg. Defense claims that Jeremy Skibicki is not criminally responsible due to mental illness. For the past 3 weeks, the Crown has argued his crimes were intentional and racially motivated. Today's witness was a Winnipeg police sergeant who shared details about a pen pal relationship Skibicki had with a woman in a Nova Scotia prison. With more now, here is TR Wheatley with a report that has details you may find disturbing.
The Crown called Detective Michael McDonald Wednesday. He confirmed seizing 9 letters that Jeremy Skibicki wrote to an inmate inside the Nova Institution for Women in Truro, Nova Scotia. McDonald told court that in May 2023, he and another detective flew to Truro to meet with Crystal Hunt. He revealed there were 2 or 3 letters she destroyed. By this time, Skibicki had already been in custody for more than a year. He has since admitted to killing Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo Woman. The letters were entered as exhibits that were shared with the media. There were no letters from Hunt shown to the court. In total, there were 39 pages between the 9 letters written by Skibicki. The mail exchange continued for 16 weeks from May 4th until April 27, 2023. The first letter from Skibicki implies that Hunt wrote to him first. His third sentence in, Skibicki writes, "Anything I say or write has the potential to be used against me by the Crown." Skibicki goes on to tell Hunt he was adopted and shares his birth name with her, also saying he has a real connection with her. He also asks for pictures in that first letter and shares he has a preference in women who are not visibly fat. In his second letter, sent a month later, he tells Hunt that he is still legally married and starts to build a bond with her, even writing about out-of-body experiences they could share. He also signed the letter, Love Anton. He also thanks her for sending him a picture that he since put on his wall. The third letter tells Hunt that he cares for her. He shares that he's upset because he found out he is now legally divorced despite not signing any papers. The same letter also has Skibicki suggesting he wants to marry Hunt. He also starts to talk about his case, writing, "I am seriously considering giving up even though I have a not criminally responsible defense with experts. I could have 100 experts while the Crown has none, and I'd still get convicted by a bunch of morons." Skibicki then starts asking things of Hunt, talking about how he can start writing fiction novels, and asks her to do some research about which prison would be the best fit for him, one that allows the most frequent conjugal visits, cell phones, and video games. The fifth letter delves into Skibicki's ideologies about attacks on white culture. Skibicki compares the public school system today to being much worse than residential schools. He points fingers at Jewish people and Muslims for causing trouble, eventually writing, "Enough of my rant. I sometimes go from 0 to communism in 20 seconds." The remaining letters show Skibicki and Hunt seeming to trauma bond. By the last one sent on April 27th, 2023, Skibicki says, "But that doesn't mean we can't love each other." After the letters were entered as evidence, the Crown confirmed Skibicki had his psychiatric evaluation that they requested last week, but wouldn't say much else. There is a break in the trial until June 3rd, when defense will begin presenting their side that Skibicki is not criminally responsible on account of mental disorder. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thank you, TR. During the trial, the proper pronunciation of Skibicki's last name was revealed. APTN will be using this pronunciation moving forward. For more on this trial, head over to aptnnews.ca for stories by our web reporter Kathleen Martins. And if you are triggered by this report, supports are available 24/7 through the MMIW G2S support line. That number is 1-844-413-6649. A sentencing hearing is taking place in a Yellowknife Supreme courtroom today, 4 years after the violent murder of 22-year-old Breanna Menacho. Our reporter Charlotte Morit-Jacobs has been covering that case and brings us this story.
Kind, giving, and always able to light up a room. That's how the family and friends of the late Brianna Menacho are remembering her. And today they have a chance to share how the tragic loss of their loved one has forever shaped their lives. Mother of Brianna, Lisa Zoe, was the first to testify with her victim impact statement. She says she's now the prisoner and the one suffering. She directly addressed the judge when asking him to consider their family when he looks over the GLADU factors in the pre-sentence report. She says, we support our Indigenous criminals, but what about our Indigenous victims? In May of 2020, the 22-year-old Dene woman from Yellowknife, Toledo, and Edzo area was violently murdered. Devin Laborie pleads guilty to second-degree murder. He attacked Menacho with a hatchet in his Yellowknife apartment and instructed bystanders not to leave. Following the murder, he showed up at an acquaintance and told them he had hurt Brianna, and then checked himself into Stanton Territorial Psychiatric Unit, but removed himself 12 hours later. As the family went out looking for Brianna, Laborie hid her body in a chest freezer with plans of disposing it along with other incriminating evidence. At the time, he was let out on release with an order not to consume any substances or be in possession of any weapons. Many in the courtroom today are wearing black and red custom MMIWG t-shirts with the slogan, "Justice for Bree." With nearly a dozen victim impact statements, it's expected Laborie will be sentenced tomorrow on May 23rd. Charlotte Morit-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Over the weekend, it was reported that convicted BC serial killer Robert Pickton was assaulted by another inmate, and he is now clinging to life in hospital. The 74-year-old was serving a maximum prison in Quebec and was eligible for day roll parole. There are also reports that before the incident, he was writing a book blaming another person for the murders he was convicted for. APTN's Tina House has the story from Vancouver with reactions from the families he impacted.
Corrections Canada has confirmed that this past Sunday, Robert Pickton was the victim of a major assault by another inmate at the Port Cartier Maximum Prison in Quebec. He was allegedly speared in the head with a broken broomstick and is undergoing surgery. And for Sarah DeVries and Lorelei Williams, they don't believe Robert Pickton is a victim. And here on this rainy day, they came to honor the true victims, their families.
They're not going to be forgotten, and they're going to be remembered and honored still.
Sarah's mother, also named Sarah, went missing in 1998. Lorelei Williams' cousin, Tanya Holick, went missing in 1996. Both women's DNA was found on the farm in Port Coquitlam, formerly owned by Robert Pickton and his family. Robert Pickton was never convicted of either women's deaths, so this is their way of having some closure.
Like when I think of my cousin, I just want to cry.
I was crying all last night as I was thinking about my mother and thinking about her spirit.
For Bernie Williams, whose mother and sisters were murdered on the mean streets of Vancouver's downtown east side, she also agrees today is not about Pickton, but about the families. Robert Pickton was only convicted of 6 women, but charged with dozens more.
Every sick monster, he deserves to go out in a body bag. The families are never ever gonna receive the justice that I believe that was taken from them. I think about the other women. There was 33 women, and there's no justice. So today, he's not even part of my equation today.
For Angela Marie McDougall, who knew many of the women who went missing or were murdered, she says that jailhouse justice was finally delivered to a predator that preyed on vulnerable women on these streets.
I really started to look back on the last decades of the numbers of serial killers, including this one, that have been in this neighborhood and reflecting back on that and what it's taken for families and communities to organize, to make visible the disappearances and the deaths, and also, in a big way, holding policing and the larger system accountable for their lack of action.
And back at Trout Lake, for the families, they don't want his assault to overshadow the real story, their loved ones.
I don't want people to forget her face, her name, and what this did to our families.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
We want to hear what you think about this report or any other report on APTN National News. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share with us, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories you may have missed, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also follow along with us on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Make sure to hit the APTN News like or follow button to join the conversation and see our latest stories. We have to take a short break now, but when we return, an Indigenous author from the Whitefish Lake First Nation in Alberta is unveiling a new book.
So I wrote a book a little bit based on my own experiences as a biracial person, but I also wanted to tell a story that absolutely anybody could relate to and have that lens along with it and contribute to Indigenous literature.
Welcome back. NDP MP Lori Idlot took the Liberal government to task during question period today. She says the government failed to properly fund a daycare in Nunavut. Idlot says the Tumikuluit Saipakovic Daycare in Iqaluit is on the verge of closing its doors due to insufficient funding. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised his office will look into this particular case.
Last week, I met with the Tumikulut Saipakovic Daycare in Iqaluit, a daycare that provides culturally appropriate care in Inuktitut. Because of a lack of funding, they are on the verge of closing. In 2022, the Liberals promised millions of dollars to Nunavut Daycare. The funding is taking too long to make its way to Tumikulut Saipakovic Daycare. Will the Liberals ensure Tumikulut does not fall through the cracks and get the urgent funding it needs to stay open?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Investing in early learning and child care right across the country that is affordable, that is high quality, and that is available for families is one of the cornerstones of this government's policy of the past few years. We've worked closely with provinces and territories to deliver, to make sure that money is delivered on the ground where it is needed the most. I will follow up on this particular case and make sure that the government of Nunavut is passing through the money and is accessing all the funds necessary so that childcare in the north and indeed right across the country continues to be delivered as the social program and economic program that it is.
To south of the border now, where the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act is putting Indigenous voices at the forefront, causing many U.S. museums to rethink how they present Indigenous artifacts and their responsibility to now work with Indigenous groups and organizations. While some museums have a lot of work to do, other institutions have already made long-lasting relationships. Indian Country Today's Stuart Huntington has more.
The new rule is a sea change.
It completely eliminates an institution's unilateral power over these collections and brings in tribes.
Many museums have shuttered displays rather than fall afoul of the new rules. But not everyone was caught flat-footed. 2 years ago, the American Museum of Natural History completed a 5-year overhaul of its 125-year-old Northwest Coast Hall. Steered by Native guest curators, the project perhaps lights up a healing and positive way forward.
That's a hall that was renovated about 2 years ago with real deep consultation and collaboration with representatives of tribal communities, with consulting curators who were brought in, a process that reviewed objects. One of the outcomes of that review is that some objects were repatriated if determined in the consultation that it was most appropriate for them to be repatriated.
It's earning good reviews from important quadrants.
So many Haida from Haida Gwaii, Alaska, Seattle, wherever they are going to New York and making a point of going to the American Museum of Natural History to see the Northwest Coast Hall, to see themselves in it. Our people love to go there, and I think that's the ultimate test of whether the hall is good or not for us. And the hall is good.
Getting there proved bumpy.
You know, it wasn't without conflict, but we have mechanisms to address conflict. The conflict is important. You don't learn, you don't grow unless you can talk through differences, hey?
I think we were able to reach, points of agreement, common perspective, and, that produced an exhibit that we're all very pleased with.
That perhaps lights a healing way forward.
Yeah, I think we can get there. We know we've done it in the past, and we know we can do it again.
The hall was renovated with
deep input into how things are displayed, sensitivities around what could be displayed next to what, or what the framework or what the construct around the display would look like. And to me, that's actually the model of not only what this work should look like or what the product should be in terms of an exhibition hall, but really what the process should be in terms of collaboration between the museum and communities.
The Ohio History Connections Museum in Columbus is also looking forward. As part of a 2020 expansion, it reached out to area tribes.
The decision was made to expand this, and partially because of the need for that expansion, we had this opportunity to bring in more voices.
That inclusivity is now the law of the land, but it's always been just plain good practice, say Indigenous exhibit designers.
When we're getting into a new project, we put together first a committee within those Indigenous communities that we're touching. And we sit down with them, we visit with the artists, we visit with their historians, their elders. We allow them to shape the material that we then interpret and put into the exhibits that we create. In the end, there's something that's far more fascinating that comes out. Now that there's a law in place, I'm hoping that the museums start to figure that out as well. It's not their job to interpret our historical belongings. It's their job to allow us to take those belongings back and then allow us to tell the stories that go along with it.
Stuart Huntington, ICT News.
A Saskatchewan-based author has released her debut novel that was inspired by her real life. The book includes stories of struggling with pranks, hair mishaps, and discovering her Indigenous culture. Video journalist Rachel May in Saskatoon has more on the new book, Mortified.
So I wrote a book a little bit based on my own experiences as a biracial person, but I also wanted to tell a story that absolutely anybody could relate to and have that lens along with it and contribute to Indigenous literature.
Christy Jackson is a member of Whitefish Lake First Nation, but lives in Cormorant Park, Saskatchewan. She says this story is for anyone who has ever been embarrassed. The story follows the main character, Belinda, who was accidentally cursed by her best friend, Sally. The book is filled with situations that range from embarrassing to triumphant, all while learning to make the best of a bad situation.
I would like to say to all kids everywhere that, there will come a time when you can laugh about it.
Jackson says she wrote the book to contribute to the nonprofit program that she volunteers with, Santa in the North, which helps improve literacy in remote Indigenous communities.
What we do is we provide a book for Christmas for each of the 1,400 kids in the 7 Athabasca communities.
The novel debuted on Tuesday and is available wherever books are sold. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
We have so much Indigenous books in our bookstores. Keep it coming. Thank you, Rachel. We got to take a quick commercial break, but when we return, Canada's Got Talent winner Rebecca Strong comes home. That story and more. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Irene Bent wants to celebrate her daughter Nikita, pictured here with her instructor. Nikita recently competed in Regina, Saskatchewan on May 19th, where she won 3 medals. From all of us at APTN National News, we are sending Nikita a big congratulations on your big success. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, send us your pics to share at aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Newfoundland and Labrador, St. John's 11, PEI, Charlottetown 25. Kuujjuaq 7, Nain 2. Southern Quebec, Quebec City 26, Montreal 26 with clouds. Southern Ontario, Peterborough 26, Toronto 25. Northern Ontario, Timmins 15, Wawa 9. Northern Manitoba, Churchill 0, Thompson 8. Southern Manitoba, Princess Harbour 9, Brandon 15. Southern Saskatchewan, Yorkton 11, Regina 13. Northern Saskatchewan, Stony Rapids 15, Meadow Lake 10. Way out in northern Alberta, Fort Chipewyan 14, Peace River 20. Southern Alberta, Edmonton 13, Lethbridge 14. Southern BC, Kamloops 24, Vancouver 18. Northern BC, Dease Lake 13, Smithers 15 with clouds. Old Crow 5, Mayo 12. Northwest Territories, Norman Wells 20, Wrigley 24. Inuvik 12, Fort McPherson 5. Baker Lake 3, Chesterfield 3 with clouds and rain. Clyde River 1, Aglulik +1 with rain. A photographer in Montreal recently captured a rare encounter. Alana Block was taking photos of birds at the city's botanical gardens when she heard a commotion and saw this. It was a small fox and a Canada goose in a showdown. At one point, the fox had the goose's neck in its mouth, but the goose managed to break free. Block hid and watched as the standoff continued, all the while capturing video and photographs of the animals.
I just watched the scene and it was unbelievable. The fox kept going after the goose and the goose was flapping and hitting it. The fox was limping at one point because the goose is way bigger than the fox. And it was crazy. And then the fox would go and just lie in the grass, the long grass, and wait and watch. And then it would go after the goose again. It finally gave up and the goose survived and walked away. And the fox went off to hunt a squirrel.
Sounds like a Wasaki Chalk story for sure. On Monday, a crowd of people came out to welcome hometown hero Rebecca Strong back to Saskatchewan. The Prince Albert Grand Council welcomed Strong back home at a packed house in the Prince Albert Exhibition Hall following her $1 million win on the 3rd season of Canada's Got Talent. As the crowd cheered, "You're beautiful and we love you, Rebecca," she was moved to tears. She performed the song that got her the Golden Buzzer on Canada's Got Talent, Stone Cold by Demi Lovato, along with other songs like Creep by Radiohead and Never Enough, a song from the musical and movie The Greatest Showman. After dazzling the crowd, she signed autographs and took photos with the fans. Love to see it. And a reminder, we will be interviewing Rebecca Strong early next week for a future show, so keep an eye out for that. That is your APTN National Newscast for this Wednesday, hump day of May 22nd. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for our midday newscast. I'm Kristen Ashkate. Hi, miigwech, masicho. Thank you for watching.